vacation days, job security.
Being able to be heard, we feel valued, we feel respected.
Lee Summit is a very progressive city.
It's growing, it's thriving.
We have this drive towards not just doing a job, but doing it with a spirit of excellence.
I had the opportunity to continue to grow, regardless of 30 plus years doing this kind of work.
It's more than just dollars and cents.
We're here really to give back,
Providing a service to better a community,
to go out and serve people.
to be a part of something bigger than yourself. If I would have known what I know now, years ago, I would have been here much sooner.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Jordan. Here's your flash briefing for the week of April 20th. Earth Day is Wednesday, April 22nd. Celebrate by getting involved in local events like Sweep the Summit, Recycle Fest, and Drug Takeback Day, all happening Saturday, April 25th. Find full details on the city's website, cityofls.net. There's still time to review and comment on the Capital Improvement Plan. The comment period for the 2027 to 2031 CIP will be open until midnight on April 22nd. Find a link to review and comment on the city's website. And City Council will meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. Following the regular session, newly elected officials will take part in a swearing-in ceremony. Meetings are open to the public or watch live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe on the city's website. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
The City of Lee Summit has hundreds of traffic lights across its more than 1,000 lane miles, all managed by the city's Public Works traffic technicians. The work happens inside those metal boxes on the side of each intersection. Inside, technicians program a device called the controller. The controller communicates directly with each signal head via underground wires, telling each light when to turn on and off based on a programmed cycle. City traffic engineers designed this cycle to allow traffic to flow as efficiently as possible for that particular intersection. In order to best match current traffic patterns, they install something called a detection system. Detection systems have taken many forms over the years, from sensors in the pavement to radar boxes. But in Lee Summit, they primarily consist of cameras, which workers mount above the traffic signals. These cameras don't record video or your speed. Instead, they monitor the spaces at the front of the intersection and identify when a vehicle is present in a specific spot. Once a vehicle is identified, the detection system sends a message to the controller, which then adapts its standard cycle to best serve the cars that are present. The pedestrian button works in a similar way. When the button is pressed, the controller receives a signal, requesting that it allow that section of the pedestrian walkway to go, which it then inserts into the signal pattern. Technicians also install something called a conflict monitor. The conflict monitor is a device in which they program all the potential patterns of lights that would lead to a collision. If the other systems mistakenly trigger those patterns, the conflict monitor sends the intersection into flash, causing all lights to flash red and directing drivers to treat it like an all-way stop. City traffic technicians implement and maintain these systems so effectively, we rarely consider them. But every time we safely pass through a signal-controlled intersection, it's all thanks to their work. So the next time you're waiting at a red light, remember the delicate coordination of super smart systems that move you through that space safely and efficiently every day. Keeping 500 miles of public sewer lines flowing keeps utility costs low and our environment healthy. The Lee Summit Water Utilities Operations Team does this every day. Sewer lines can be blocked with everything from roots to flushable wipes to food grease. When a potential blockage is identified, teams use detailed mapping to locate access points.
My camera's at 18038.
A camera truck parks at one end of the sewer line and a jet truck at the other. The camera truck carries a rover-type camera, which the team lowers into the manhole. The operator then drives the camera into the pipe, where it views and records from its adjustable lens. Here, it can identify the cause and precise location of the blockage. The jet truck will then use high-pressure water to remove the blockage. Starting at the opposite end of the line, the operator inserts the jet head into the manhole. Pressurized water shoots out of the head, clearing out debris and propelling it forward. The camera observes this process, and the two operators communicate via walkie-talkie to coordinate movement.
Hold it right there. Go ahead and fire it up, half pressure. I'm in front of you.
Once the jet head has passed the blockage, the operator reels it back in. The camera can then inspect the pipe to see if the blockage is cleared.
Yeah, go ahead and pull out. We're done.
With the job complete, the camera is removed, cleaned, and returned to the truck, and the crew moves on to the next job. In addition to addressing identified problems, the team will systematically check every line in the city in a 5-year period, keeping costs low and our community healthy, today and for years to come.
Lee Summit has lots of local destinations, but where do you start? Green Street, a vibrant community space in the heart of downtown, is where Lee Summit comes together. Its 3 dynamic areas have something for everyone. Green Street Market is a modern event venue and home to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market. Green Street Lawn is a covered performance space hosting live music, family activities, and more. Green Street Grove is a mixture of gathering spaces, an immersive playground, and bold architectural features. And all 3 areas host community events year-round. So the next time you set out to enjoy the city you love, remember, meet at Green Street.
Officers en route, 914, armed robbery.
Keeping our city beautiful is a collaborative effort for all citizens. The City of Lee Summit supports these efforts with a set of guidelines or ordinances, and the city's neighborhood services team helps put those guidelines into practice. These guidelines ensure grass stays trimmed, fences are maintained, home exteriors are kept up, and much more. We can all help out by first making sure our property meets these guidelines. If you notice a potential violation on a neighbor's property, first check the guidelines on the city's website. If it is a violation, the next step is to communicate with your neighbor directly. If that is not possible, or if the problem persists, it can be reported through LS Connect. LS Connect is an online platform for submitting issues to the city. You can access it on the city website or by downloading the app through your mobile device's app store. Once you submit an issue, it is reviewed by the Neighborhood Services team. A Neighborhood Services officer will then visit the site. For any violations found, the Neighborhood Services officer will leave a notice and speak with the property owner if possible. The officer's goal is to help the property owner solve or abate the problem as quickly as possible. After a 10-day period, the officer will inspect the site to see if the issue has been abated. Normally, by this point, the issue has been resolved. If not, depending on the type of issue, an extension could be granted, or the city might fix the problem at the owner's expense. In rare cases, if all other measures have been applied, the issue will be resolved in the municipal court. Neighborhood services officers work hard to resolve problems quickly and positively. They are here to support the community as we work together to keep our city beautiful.
Calling to the order of this meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee for Monday, April 20th, 2026. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Funk.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Vice Chair Lovell.
Here.
Chair Shields.
Here. All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the amendment that was put out this past week. Could we get a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Funk.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovell.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right. Next item on the agenda is public comments, and I'm so excited that we have a member of the public here to comment today. Elizabeth Hoon, would you like to speak?
I'll try and move this a little bit. This way? This way? Can you hear me?
You're welcome to use that microphone if you want to be able to see us better, but that's fine too.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Hoon. I'm a Greenwood resident, but I have proudly served the Lee Summit Police Department for 19 and a half years. I currently work as a lead communications specialist. I want to begin by recognizing the efforts of both my past and current command staff, City Manager Dunning, Beate Hager, and the City Council for working toward the pay parity between police and fire communication specialists. That effort mattered and it made a difference, but today I'm here because that progress is now reversed. For nearly a decade, police communication specialists have been asking for one simple thing: fair and equitable pay for the work we do. The city's 2017 agreement with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2195, created a clear divide. And despite a commitment from city leadership to work to deliver a competitive and equitable pay plan by 2020, the gap only widened with the 2019 IAFF contract. This is not a theoretical issue. It has real, measurable consequences. When concerns go unaddressed, people lose trust, and when equity continues, people leave. That is exactly what happened. Morale declined, staffing levels dropped to just 9 out of 18 positions. To keep operations running, the department made the decision to reassign 2 patrol officers to dispatch, and the team carried an unsustainable burden working 400 to 600 hours of overtime every month just to maintain 24/7 coverage. 911 dispatch is already one of the highest turnover professions. The stress is high, the hours are demanding, and the emotional toll is real. When pay is not competitive, we are not just losing employees, we are driving them away. Despite these challenges, over the last several years, we have worked hard to rebuild. We've improved training, we've hired new staff. Today, we are at 17 employees, up from 9, but still below our current authorized staffing level of 22 people. And we have 2 who are resigning this month. This progress is fragile, and I believe it will not hold if the underlying issues remain unresolved. A 2020 audit by Mission Critical Partners made this point unmistakably clear. If pay disparity is not addressed, efforts to co-locate or consolidate dispatch operations will fail. And now we are preparing to move into the Joint Operations Center on May 26th, a major investment and an opportunity to strengthen collaboration between police and fire. This should be a moment of pride and optimism. But instead, we are heading into it with a renewed and significant pay gap. We are heading into it with some people who now do not want to even make that move. If this disparity continues, I believe the result will not be unity or efficiency. It will be frustration, division, and likely more resignations. I have seen this pattern before and know where it can lead. This is the moment to act, not after morale drops again, not after more employees leave, but now. Police communications specialists are highly trained professionals performing critical life-saving work every single day. We are asking the city to honor that work with fair and equitable compensation. Addressing the disparity is not just about pay, it's about retention, morale, operational stability, and ultimately the safety of the community we serve. I urge you to take meaningful action and correct this inequity before it costs us more than we can afford to lose. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for coming and speaking, and I know this is an issue that's been on all of our minds, and we do take it very seriously. We are going to discuss it tonight, so thank you. All right, next item on our agenda as we move into business is 5A 2026-7562, approval of the April 6th Finance and Budget Committee action letter. Do we have any discussion? If not, I would look for motion.
Chair.
Yes.
I move to approve the April 6, 2026 Finance and Budget Committee action letter.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the action letter. Can we get a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Funk.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovell.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item is TMP-3665, an ordinance approving a sole source agreement in the form of purchase orders between the City of Lee Summit and United System and Software, Inc. for the purchase of encoder receiver transmitter units for radio read meters for an annual amount not to exceed $150,000 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city. Mr. Thorne?
Good afternoon, Jeff Thorne, Director of Water Utilities. Bring before you today a sole source agreement for the purchase of ERTs, encoder receiver transmitters. The ERTs sit in our meter wells and provide out data from the meter wells to our remote reading operations when we go around and read meters. There's 40,000 meters in the city, roughly, and about 95% have been converted to ERTs at this point. All the ERTs are of the same make, model, and brand. Our reading equipment is also. That is bought through this vendor. That's why we have a sole source here today. Our plan is to finish out the other 5% of our reading and then have a stock to do replacements as the batteries die and the equipment fails. But that is the purpose of this contract, and that's what I bring before you today.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? The use of these electronic readers allows your staff to be more efficient, not having to go and manually look at every one.
Absolutely. When these aren't working, then we're popping lids and we're reading dials. And so we're getting to the point where we're moving from actually the AMR, the automated reading, to AMI, which will be a more informational based things where we'll be doing reading more often, getting more information, ultimately trying to get to dashboarding on customer accounts and that kind of stuff. So this is a step in that process.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or discussion? If not, I would look for motion.
Chair.
Yes.
I move to advance to City Council for approval TMP-3665, an ordinance approving a sole source agreement in the form of purchase orders between the City of Lee Summit, United Systems and Software, Inc. for the purchase of encoder, receiver, transmitter units for radio read meters for an annual amount not to exceed $150,000 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to recommend recommend TMP 3665 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Funk,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lovell.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item on the agenda is 2026-7616, the fiscal year 2027 General Fund and Public Safety Sales Tax Fund Budget Work Session. Mr. Dunning.
Thank you, Chair Shields. Mark Dunning, City Manager. As I'm pulling up the presentation here, I'll share with you, it was about a year ago. Chair Shields, I think it was you when I was presenting to the City Council, and you asked me what kept me up at night with regard to our budgets, and it was my response was it's the level of uncertainty going into last fiscal year. And I will tell you that preparing this budget is keeping me up at night. Not only me, but I'm sure you all as our governing body, every staff member as part of this organization, certainly our management team. It's a tough budget to put together. I'm just going to say it right up front. And so thank you for this opportunity to have this more of a work session. This is not a complete proposal for our general fund and our public safety sales tax funds in putting together our budget. We do need some help, we need some guidance, and we need some feedback. And so this presentation, it hopefully turns into some dialogue and some discussion about our approach to putting together our fiscal year 27 general fund and public safety sales tax budgets. We're not alone. I know that other municipalities are putting together some very challenging budgets, and that ties back to the level of uncertainty. Not only other municipalities, but I know school districts as well. And so what I will tell you is management team has been working diligently along with our budget technicians in each department to put this together. And I will share with you that there has been communications that have been sent to our workforce, letting them know it's a challenging budget, letting them know we're having this discussion today, because quite honestly, this presentation will provide more context into what we're trying to plan for. Now, when I think about our annual budget, I think it's not that we have to have everything solved today or come July 1st. A budget is a plan, and we work that plan throughout the fiscal year. So keeping that in mind, that's the way I view our budgets, is that it's the allocation of resources to achieve certain things that we want to achieve over the coming year, and then we work that budget over the course of that year. So that year goes from July 1 of this year through June 30 of 2027. So we call this our fiscal year 27 budget. So with respect to some of these uncertainties, these financial pressures, I'll speak briefly about Jackson County assessed valuation. That property tax collection is the biggest portion of our revenues. I'm going to say, and I'm going to ask our management team to correct me. Feel free to correct me as I go through this presentation, but is it around 30% of our revenues? Okay, I'm getting a nod. 30% of our revenues. So with regard to our assessed valuation, we know things are changing, and we know that there are senior tax credits that are coming online. We know that the county executive is proposing to do some residential tax rebates or credits over perhaps a 3-year period. And we know that with regard to commercial assessed valuation, there's a plan or a proposal to, I'll say, contain those increased in commercial assessments. And so that has a big impact on our budget, as well as those others that I mentioned to you. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that space. With regard to our growth in sales tax, I'll say it's marginal. Usually we're around 4%, sometimes higher. Within this proposed budget, we're at 3%. That's combined between sales and use taxes, 3% overall growth. We do have the recently approved collective bargaining agreements to satisfy. So that's the International Association of Firefighters, the Fraternal Order of Police, and the International Association of Machinists. So those are agreements that we need to fulfill, and we need to plan for that within our budget. I don't think it's any news to you or our workforce about the escalating costs with regard to health care. And I know we're on a mission to look at what can we do differently in that space, but that's something yet that we need to plan for. Within our preparation for the budget too is we're calling it the pay and growth plan. It's a study. Think of a pay and classification plan to make sure that we are competitive within our vast variety of careers and disciplines within the city, and then to make sure that we're market competitive in that space as well. So that's work that's ongoing. We'll let you know that our loggers, that's our pension program, local area government employee retirement system, those increases they're coming, they are here. We need to plan for that within this budget to the tune of about $1 million. And then lastly, operational costs. We are bringing on new facilities, the Joint Operations Center, of course, the South Substation. Consider that an additional facility in a way because otherwise, after we built the new fire station, we repurposed that. So, new facilities that we've been bringing online come with an operational cost. Green Street to some extent because that's a revenue generator too. So to some extent, we're continuing to learn about operational costs with Green Street. So quite a few things as we prepare this budget to be mindful of. I will let you know reports from the state. It's not just here, us locally, jurisdictions-wise. I know the state is planning for a decline of 2.1% through their fiscal year. So it's not just municipalities and school districts and taxing jurisdictions. It's the state, too, that's also kind of having some of these financial pressures. So on April 6th of this year, we presented to you what we anticipate, what we project to be revenue projections for the fiscal year. And we always start there so that we understand what might we expect from a resource perspective before we go into allocating where should those resources be directed. And so what I can tell you is I'll say minimal growth in our general fund. Last year, I believe we were just over $100 million. Very minimal growth in our general fund. And the public safety sales tax, very minimal growth there too. I should note, general fund is a compilation of many sources of funding. Public safety sales tax is purely that. It's the half-cent public safety sales tax. So it's a little more subject to only sales tax differences. So this slide is here to represent let me just walk through it. So you can see the different funds there on the left and what we propose in our revenues. And we're combining these two funds together because they're I'll say our most flexible funds to provide all the city services that we provide for this community for the most part, other than enterprise funds for like parks and water utilities and things of that nature. So, but we're very mindful that we're using the half-cent public safety sales tax for public safety. So our combined general fund, and I'm going to call it PSST, of over $116 million. What I'm representing in the expenditure column then is as the departments prepare their budgets for the fiscal year 27 budget, you can see what was proposed. Almost $106 million in expenditures for PSST, a little over $15 million. And so that total was over $121 million. So you can see that there's a difference there. That's not even considering any expansion requests. That's just the requests that came in to say, for the next year, here's what we would like to achieve. Here's the resources we would like to have in order to do our work over the coming year. So obviously, we need to work to trim that number down in order to get to a balanced budget. What is not within those numbers are some of the lines below. So public safety collective bargaining agreements. There's an asterisk by this number because we are still getting to the accurate number, but for the most part, we need to plan for around $7 million for those in the coming year. And then also contained within this is $2 million initially that we were considering core general wage enhancements as we do the work of the pay and growth plan, what resources could come to bear, how could we plan for that when that study gets completed. That $2 million, I want to be clear, that $2 million does not represent that 3.5% merit increase COLA for core general. That's already within that $106 million up there. So that's just in addition to. So when you look at the collective then, $13.4 million gap to solve for in our efforts. So what have we done since we've put that picture together? We've asked all departments to go back and look at what we call operational costs. So operational costs being organizational dues, travel, training, professional fees, supplies, furniture, fixture, equipment, things of that nature. And we were able to identify $2 million to bring that $13.4 million down to $11.4 million. We'll see some pie graphs here later, and you'll see where do we have flexibility within our budget to make those kinds of changes. It's fairly limited. So we started looking at what is the approach we can take to get to a balanced budget. And what we realized is if we went back to fiscal year 25 actual, what we actually spent as an organization in fiscal year 2025, that would create that ability to then address and fund the collective bargaining agreements and some other commitments as well. As we did this work, we asked every department to do this. Go back to those numbers and ask each department what might it take in order to get to that funding level. Along the way, we found a few revenue enhancements that we'll certainly talk through tonight. We looked at how are we going about our capital project chargebacks. As we're doing those capital projects, some of the time, effort, and personnel dedicated to those projects can be charged back to the capital projects. This is different than the general fund. We've also considered service level reductions and then looking at personnel and what that looks like as well with regard to hiring freezes and if we have to, going into workforce reductions. And so here's what that exercise brought to light. And we're calling this scenario 1, going back to fiscal year 2025 actuals. So you can see a slight revenue change there, very slight in our revenue, just a little over $117 million. When we look at our general fund expenditure, then it comes down to just over $95 million, and public safety sales tax reduced a little bit there, and you get to $108 million, $108.7 million in a proposed budget. You look at the differences then, and you see the $8.3 million there, which could be used to address the collective bargaining agreements, but it doesn't get us all the way to solving, if we chose to put resources to some wage enhancements towards core general, it doesn't fully get us to that $2 million, but we'll say 1.3 or so in that space. So that's what that scenario enlightened us on. That's not to say that that's what we want to do, though, but that's one way to get to some numbers. That would be a balanced budget. So here's what that looks like with regard to some percentages, and I'll walk you through this slide here. So we compared this, we started with our fiscal year 26 budget. That's not what I just represented. It's not our 25 actuals, but where are we today with our current budget? That's what that column represents. Then you see where we started, all departments saying, here's what we would like to have dedicated resource-wise for our departments, which is the $106 million. Scenario 1 I just walked you through. If we were to hold tight to fiscal year 2025 actual numbers, what that looks like, $102 million. And then you can see the difference, the change between, I want to be very clear on this is the change between fiscal year 26, our current budget, with where we would go to with the fiscal year 25 actuals. And you can see the differences there. Now, I want to make this very clear. In fire and police, those percentages go up. The collective bargaining agreement estimates, as I mentioned, are plugged into that, right? So an additional, we'll say 3.4 million and 3.6 million into those budgets. That's why you see that increase. What you shouldn't take into this is that fire and police are not doing reductions, because that was done in that preparation to hit the number in the fiscal year 2025 actuals. Does that make sense? I want to pause there and make sure that's clear in everybody's
I'm sorry, what
mind.
were you saying that for police and fire reductions?
Yeah, so you can see the increases there. The increase over fiscal year 26. So just between police and fire, 1.5 million on police and 3 million in the fire departments. But what is also in those numbers is addressing the collective bargaining agreement. So we're, in a sense, think of it this way. In police and fire, we'll need to scale some things back, and then when we add in the 3.4 and 3.6, it gets us to this number, right? Otherwise, if we pull those collective bargaining agreements out of that, those percentages go down. I think I'm explaining this right? Okay, yep.
I'm sorry, I really want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you saying cutting the number of employees in those departments back to where they were a couple of years ago, or did I just?
It could entail reductions.
I just want to understand what you're saying, where you're saying going back to 2025.
I'm confused too.
Okay. I think you need to explain that more
Yeah,
clearly.
let me take another run.
Including the new contracts.
Yeah, the asterisk down there, FY '27 budget scenario in this table is representing that the collective bargaining agreement amounts are in those numbers. Scenario 1. And what I'm trying to explain is, look, if all departments went back to fiscal year 2025 actuals, shouldn't these all be negative percentages? And they're not, because we've plugged in the 3.4 and 3.6 collective bargaining agreements, which are skewing the percentage for fire and police in this table.
So you're saying in the scenario 1, for all these departments, you basically went back to 2025 actuals, and you're saying we need in these departments, like let's say court, because it's the first one that just pops up. If we go to 1.468, that's actually that's the budget that was in 2025, and so we've done that all across the board except fire and police, because what you're saying is like we have not made any reductions there because we're taking into account the collective bargaining agreement. It's not to, are you saying there could be reductions in those areas?
Either in levels of service, programs, things of that nature, right? Okay. In order to get that number.
So you basically gave us this number that you've given us for fire citywide and police is as is with no reductions taking place right now. And that's why.
So if I'm understanding.
Because you've made reductions in these other ones.
But you're saying, if you go back to what we were spending 2 years ago and just say that's your budget, but we're putting some on top of that because we know that we've got a collective bargaining agreement in place where we have to increase those salaries. But to get there, it still sounds like you might have to cut at least some discretionary police programs that you can't pay for as many hours because you're paying more per hour based on the collective bargaining agreement, so you just won't be able to staff some of the things we're currently staffing. That's the kind of reduction in service we're talking to get to this number.
That's accurate. That's accurate. So maybe I should back up a little bit. Every department, right, go back to fiscal year 2025. So every department is looking at that and saying, how do we scale back, right? Everybody did that.
I assume these are not adjusted for inflation, right? So if you say that we're going to give you the same budget in nominal terms we gave you a couple of years ago, that's sort of effectively a 5-6% cut because of inflation over the last couple of years.
That's correct.
So you may have to cut some staff to get to the point.
That's correct.
Or other expenditures to get to the point where you can hit this number. So you can't just magically turn back the clock, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm not saying that that's a no-go, just like I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Not to muddy the discussion anymore, but earlier in your earlier slides, you mentioned there are like the Joint Operations Center, the new police substation, those are coming online as additional expenses and expansions. Are those numbers in here?
So I believe those, we did not, when we went back, I don't think we cut those, reduced those, right? What we're trying to do here is what do we know?
Comprehensive.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point those out. With regard to citywide, this is probably the first time you're seeing the citywide column. What you don't see on here is ITS and some of those internal service costs. We usually break those out. I do have a slide later in the presentation all the way at the back if you want to see what's contained within citywide and what's driving that to be, not a reduction, but a 5.2% increase. So happy to get to that slide.
At least say generally what's in
so citywide, so that's ground emergency medical transport, it's our bad debt, it's county collection fees, it's election costs. Every year we'll plug a vacancy savings amount into our budget knowing that we don't have employees in every position 100% of the time throughout the year, and so that's this citywide account that contains some of those costs that's borne across the city just as an organization.
Okay.
So you can see here then the level of percentage reduction in the respective departments. And as one would imagine, the larger department, such as Public Works, Development Services, the larger the percentage. And I would say this too, the smaller departments, HR, law, the smaller department, the less flexibility you have in looking at your budget and making decisions. So, but I will say this, and I want to make this very clear. This is an exercise to say what if, right? And this is what the data is telling us. I want to make that very clear. It's not saying this is what we're going to do or proposing. It's to create some dialogue around how do we get to a balanced budget. Okay, and then more of a pie graph representation here. So this is a difference between fiscal year 26, how we're currently operating, and if we were to go to budget scenario 1, that data I just showed you in the spreadsheet there, and so you can see slight increases, police and fire, and the citywide, and then reductions within the other respective areas there. And this is slicing our budget a little differently, not by department, but by cost. I'll call them cost centers, right? You've got personnel, you've got supplies, and these different areas. So you can see if we were to, in fiscal year 26, what those percentages are, and then if scenario 1 were put in place, what do those percentages look like? So adjustments here and there throughout the cost centers. So this is continuing to stay with that scenario 1. What does that mean? What we did in putting together scenario 1 is, like I mentioned, we found a few things we could do from a revenue enhancement perspective. There's been this consideration of putting the property tax collection or tax collection back in place here at City Hall. So there's some funding in there in hopes that working with Jackson County that service can be provided here again at City Hall, as well as looking at how we do our funding agreements with developers if they're seeking incentives, and they put in we do it through a funding agreement arrangement, and we charge time back to those developers that are seeking incentives so that developer is paying for those services rather than taxpayers. So some slight adjustments on the revenue enhancement side. With regard to capital project charges, we feel that as we're delivering capital projects, we call them chargebacks, right? So in a way, the capital projects are paying for the staff time necessary to deliver those projects, not the general fund. And increasing those chargebacks, this is really an increase. We already do chargebacks, increasing that chargeback to the tune of $1.1 million. Now, what does that do? It shifts the burden over to the capital side, and then you have less funding, we'll say, for the actual construction, right? The streets, the curbs, and things of that nature. So it's a balancing between putting in hard construction out within the community versus, sharing some of that cost on the capital side for some of the personnel and resources that go in to deliver those capital projects. Service level reductions, more on the operational side, $4.6 million in scenario 1 as we think through trying to categorize what does that mean. There would be visible reductions across the organization. Again, we're asking every department to basically go backwards, which is against our grain. We're wired to do better every year. And so this is really tough to figure out, man, if we needed to give something up or push pause on something, what might that be? But overall, from that service level reduction, $4.6 million is what we've identified. So just some highlights there, right? It's reducing what we've been doing within the cultural arts space. We've worked really hard over the last couple of years to get more on top of right-of-way maintenance and things like that, mowing, and it kind of swirls in that beautification space. So we could scale back in some ways in that space. Facilities maintenance areas. I'll say non-essential duties within public safety. So think of core services, what are we here to do, and then asking ourselves, do we have to do that, and just identifying things that if we couldn't do it anymore, what might that be? Public education types of things within service level reductions. Now, with regard to hiring freeze and workforce reduction, you can see the number there, 71, almost 72 employees in order to get to a balanced budget through scenario one. That includes, we always have vacancies within the city. So there's a number of vacancies within that number, but vacancies, I will tell you this, does not solve for that number all the time. I think currently right now, if I'm accurate, I'd say we have about 80 plus vacancies currently, but you don't just plan on those being vacant for a whole year. So that number ranges throughout the year. But that gives you a little bit of understanding what it would take to implement scenario one that we've put together. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about what that represents.
Do we have any questions about the presentation so far? I think we'll get into a discussion about priorities a little bit later, but anything that needs to get clarified at this point? Okay, I think we can keep going.
Thank you, Chair. All right, so we're calling it scenario. If we were to do this, what does that mean? What's the impact? So what that does not entail is taking a look at what's our mission, vision, values. What's our strategic plan tell us? What does our citizen survey tell us? Council goals, department strategic plans and goals and accreditation, okay? Scenario one did not even touch on that. And so I want to take us to what should we be paying attention to? What's guiding us in our resource allocation? And so I'll briefly go through that thought process. So we start with our mission, vision, and values. Not going to read these to you. You can see them there on the screen. That's what we say as an organization. Through the strategic plan, that's our vision. That's our mission. And here's what we believe in as an organization. With regard to the strategic plan, we always lean on our 7 critical success factors. It's the Cliff Notes version of a pretty in-depth strategic plan. You can see those different areas of focus that we have a role or responsibility in. Not that we lead them all, but we have a role or responsibility in all of these different areas to continue to bring enhancements and things to fruition here within the community. Looking at our 2024 citizen survey, pulled out a couple slides out of this just to help us with this discussion. What do residents think are most important to provide within the community? And you can see the ratings there. Quality of police services, maintenance of our assets, I'll call it, our streets, our facilities, fire and EMS services, our parks and rec, and flow of traffic, congestion, and management are the top, 5 that the citizens said they feel are most important. Now, a different question within the citizen survey was, if the city were to enhance or increase investments in certain areas, where might that be to garner the most citizen satisfaction? So that's a different question. And what you see here is the results of that question. Maintenance of city streets and buildings and facilities. And like I mentioned, over the last couple of years, we have enhanced right-of-way maintenance. We've enhanced our facility maintenance programs in order to maintain our assets in a better condition and things of that nature. Public safety sales tax, hugely helpful in public safety. Now, we'll talk a little bit about quality of police services with respect to public safety sales tax and bringing on those enhancements. The fire department has done extremely well to do that. We're challenged in that law enforcement side just from a recruitment perspective to do the things that we hoped to do through the public safety sales tax. So Wanted to represent this slide just to show, those two slides out of the citizen survey. What can we glean from the citizen survey of 2024? And then lastly here, council goals through our retreat. What were some of those initiatives that we set into motion? And so with regard to housing, we know in the housing space, we will independently never solve that, but that doesn't mean we don't try. So there's been plenty of housing reform and thinking differently about how we can go about housing within the community. Similarly with beautification, what kinds of things can we do in that space? And there's still more work to do in all of these areas, but those are front and center. We called them big rocks, the priorities out of this council retreat and council goals. We have our plans in place with the solid waste and with the stormwater management, right? There's going to be votes coming up this fall where the citizens can cast their vote for both of those initiatives. So it's a matter of continuing to follow the plan and implement in those spaces. And then with regard to economic development strategy, I think in that space, well, I will say at the time, we were not in the same space we are today with our Economic Development Council, but with our economic development policy and working in that space with the LSEDC, still a lot of good things taking place in that space. I won't touch too much on the little rocks. Those were more things that as we get our arms around the big rocks, how can we work on the little rocks and even the sand along the way for some of those initiatives. So that kind of paints a picture of, I'll say, these high-level guiding documents and plans that come to mind as we consider how do we allocate our resources and what do we want to achieve. So here's some things that are not plugged into those numbers. That pay and growth plan, right? We don't know the results of that. What I referenced earlier was just, can we allocate some resources to do better in that space, anticipating that we'll need resources, and could we make changes along the way as we're doing this work? What's not plugged into this budget is core general range movement. Last year, I believe we did a minor range movement. No? Okay, we didn't. It was a year before, I guess. We didn't do range movement this year. That's not plugged in there. It's just 3.5%. So we do have employees that are topped out within their ranges. And then as you heard public comment earlier, right, looking at communication wages between fire department and the police department and having that on our minds as we prepare our budget. So those are some things not within the budget that come to mind as we think about this space. So what I'm representing here is thoughts. I think about, what levers do we have available to us to change? These are not necessarily limiting in the sense that I think about that scenario one. Some of these are within scenario one in the sense of service level reductions. But we could go deeper if we needed to. We truly haven't looked throughout the budget to identify, okay, are these really one-time costs that could be peeled out of ongoing and perhaps lean on our reserve funds to handle any priority one-time costs that we're trying to achieve. A voluntary retirement incentive program is something that we could pursue, and we have in years. It's been years ago. But that could be something that could be pursued if that would be a useful tool that is supported by the mayor and the council. So what I mean by, what we mean by alternative service delivery methods, what that gets into is, okay, do we need to consider outsourcing certain types of functions, restructuring things of that nature, and going about how do we, customer service might be an area where we say, let's really pull back and look at how we're delivering customer service across multiple departments, and if it makes sense to try to take a different approach to that, that's a thought. Furloughs would be a thought, whether that be just staggering work schedules. You're working less, you're getting paid the same, so your rate is the same, but you're working less, is one of those that was well, that was, I know, widely used during the COVID days. I don't think we ever got to that level here at the city. Not a popular one, but it is an option. Reduce or eliminate pay increases, right? I will say that's painful, right? Because health insurance are continuing to increase, and we understand that. Other revenue enhancements not plugged in here. I will tell you it's been a while since we've done a development fee review for at least, for my tenure here at the city, there's always been at least a goal from the mayor and the council to recover at least 50% cost recovery through development fees. I don't remember the last, I was the director at the time, last time we did this, so it's been years ago, but that's one of those topics that doesn't solve things immediately, but it helps with respect to ongoing future planning and budgets. Another one, transportation tax, leaning, kind of like we were talking in that capital chargeback space. Our transportation tax has been purely dedicated, we'll say, to those improvements, and we haven't charged staff time to those projects, so that's one that could be considered. Stormwater utility, we know that's a vote coming up. We don't want to bank on that, right? The citizens will vote on that, but I'm going to look to Michael Park. Maybe $500,000, Michael, 600,000 or more. If what we're saying here is if that stormwater utility were to be approved and put into motion, then we can not have to rely on the general fund then for that portion of a stormwater utility. But we don't know that yet. We also know that with regard to our sales tax, we have the capacity to go another %. That's not a popular one. And then, of course, always adjusting property tax levy, which is, it's a hard read right now, not knowing where things set. I will tell you this year, our assessed value went down. I think you heard that from our proposal or our presentation on our revenue forecast. So it's uncertainty. Oops. Okay. So I know it's been me talking a lot. Really interested in your thoughts and your feedback and guidance as we try to put together the general fund and public safety sales tax budget to bring forward. And when we do this, I think about all those strategic plan, those initiatives that we're trying to achieve. I think back to what is our core services? What is mission critical that we don't want to, it's non-negotiable, right? Think of those non-negotiable types of items. We will do this, we must do this. I think about what outcomes do we want to achieve through this budget, putting the resources where we want to put them. What do we hope to achieve and what matters most? If it involves areas where, yeah, we may be delivering some really exceptional services, and if we needed to dial it back a little bit, what might that be? We talked a little bit about our project, our capital improvement project delivery. If we needed to slow things down in that space, what might that look like? And then, of course, moving forward, right, this is one of the tools. Hiring freezes, and we go through, and we've done this at least a couple times during my tenure here, either a hiring freeze and putting in a vacancy analysis, right? If somebody, attrition occurs and somebody leaves, then you go through a process. Yeah, you always have the option to fill the position, but are we really thinking strategically about how we need to position ourselves as an organization? And maybe that helps in that space of, can we share resources? Can we think about that position differently? Can we tackle the services in a different way? It kind of leads you to reorganization, and whether that be through technology or just purely reorganizing ourselves in a way to continue to deliver what we hope to deliver each and every day. So those are just some bullet points that I and the team felt would be helpful to the discussion. And with that, I don't want to get to schedule next steps yet. I want to open this up for questions and dialogue based on what I've presented thus far.
Thank you, Mr. Dunning. Obviously, this is not a fun conversation to have. I don't think any of us on the dais are excited about this. and I'm sure nobody in this room is either. So I think let's start with, do we have questions from the committee? Is there anything that you guys need more information on before we start kind of digging into priorities and discussing each of these options? I have a few questions, but if you guys have anything to chime in with first.
I mean, just to kick it off, that's a lot.
It is.
So, and when I say a lot, I mean scenario one, I have so many questions about that. And I know we're not going to solve that tonight, but sticking to that scenario, you're looking at $600 and something thousand, right? One of the earlier slides said 662. This one said 613, but yeah, funny gap. But anyway, regardless, that number, that range, I appreciate you guys putting the time to kind of, I mean, it is an uncomfortable situation or conversation, and we might as well start it now. That's the first step. You guys have really dug deep and talked about some very uncomfortable topics, and but could be very realistic, not knowing what's going to happen with the county, maybe the state. So just to start off with, is that kind of where you want to come into this with scenario one?
Well, I think in many respects, we did it just as an exercise. Like I said, we didn't look at strategic plan and all those things that we were trying to deliver. We just said, if we had to do this, what's the quickest way to get there? Scenario one. Now, if it would be beneficial to go a little deeper into what does scenario one really mean, you know, I've given you generally the FTEs that because we don't have that flexibility in what I call the other supplies and services and these other areas to reduce. It's
bare bone minimum.
It is.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's so many uncontrollable things like the county. I mean, that's 30% of our budget. Is that factored in there?
Yes. Well, I mean, within the budget is within property tax
Right.
is zero growth.
Zero.
In property
Okay.
tax.
So that's factored in there.
Yes.
Okay. And then as far as timing, I know we can't answer that question. None of you can either, but what are we looking at, like August? When will we have a better idea from the county?
July is when they usually come out with the numbers, and I think by August we have to set our levies.
So that's a month or two after we need to have this done.
But is that just for, I apologize, Mayor Pro
go ahead,
Tem, is that just for knowing next year's valuations and levy information, but what about things like the possible rebates and tax credits and things like that? Will we have full clarity on those? Because that seems like a big question mark on this whole process.
It is, and what we don't know in that space is all the legalities and whether, you know, if a lawsuit happens to be, if it's implemented, right, we don't know that it's actually being implemented yet. It's being considered, it's being discussed.
Does this budget assume that it's being implemented?
No. It currently just assumes that it is negative growth in our assessed value, because our preliminary information showed negative growth in the assessed value. So we are limited to the property taxes that we collect prior year by the Hancock Amendment. So that's what's assumed in here. The idea was if the property tax rebate or credit goes into effect, that we would use our one-time reserves to handle that, and then try to assess it when we get more clarity from the county on that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize for.
No. There's just a lot of uncertainty. So obviously, as you said earlier, this is a guide. This is not set in stone. We do want to be balanced. But I see us having tons of budget revisions and amendments. I mean, we already do, but I think we're going to have that many more this next fiscal year.
Yep.
That's what I see as reality, not with all these uncertainties. And I think we'll just, I think scenario one is probably where we need to start, worst case scenario, in my opinion. And then as we find more information from the county and other sources, that's the gloom and doom part of it. I mean, obviously, you know, we've got some new commercial stuff coming online as far as revenue that we probably, are those factored in there?
I think I'll let Brianna chime in on that.
Yeah, we did factor in some increases to the commercial, but some of that is in incentivized areas. So we just don't know what we will leak into those incentivized areas. But we do have a 3% growth showing in our sales tax, which when we look at other communities that aren't really showing growth, I feel like that's a pretty aggressive growth, I would say, for where we're at with uncertainty in the economic conditions.
That's on top of sales tax and use tax?
That's for both sales tax and use tax.
That's 3% period?
Yes, yep. But most of that, when we were looking at it, was around thinking that we're going to have some new growth from those developments.
Yeah. I don't have any other questions. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of the big projects. You know, you got some stuff coming on Discovery Park. Obviously, we all know about Costco, but we know kind of what kind of impact that can have, and that'll affect this budget, no doubt. Everything that's coming on over at Oldham Village and that whole area. That's all I have for now, just to kind of kick it off.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments before I start?
Yeah, I just, is there any concern for the current budget? Like, or like a delta there, or are we in good shape? Are we going into 27, or I guess the 27 budget, but like, are we going to have a delta there, like in the hole, or?
No, we're right on budget, and I mean, there's no, previous years we would go in knowing that, hey, we haven't utilized all the resources, and how might we allocate some of those towards next year's budget, towards one-time costs. That's not the case this year. But having said that, with the collective bargaining agreements, in order to implement those this year, that was not something planned in fiscal year 26. And in order to fulfill those, we're leaning on reserves to get through this year.
Okay, that's it. I just.
Okay. Councilmember Funk, do you have anything at this time?
All right, at the moment.
Okay.
Studying something here.
No, you're good. Some of the questions I was going to have in terms of the tax credits and rebates and things have kind of been addressed already, so I appreciate that information. It sounds like maybe we already are in kind of an optimistic forecast for the sales tax. I think we all are hopeful that those numbers come in better, especially as some of these new big retail developments come online, but I understand that we have to be cautious. I think we all also know flexibility is going to be really important. My tendency is to kind of be a little bit more optimistic and then adjust mid-year if we need to see where those numbers actually start coming in. What I'm afraid of is that we end up where we were like with COVID, where we were super conservative, we made cuts, and then we had a big amount added to our fund balance, and then had staff and asking, you know, why are we being told that there's no money when there's money, and then we have the community saying, you know, service cuts. So I want to make sure that we're threading the needle as much as we can, and trying to be flexible and make adjustments as needed rather than making preemptive cuts. Some of the things seem like no-brainers, like when you talk about chargebacks for capital projects, things like that. I understand that means that there won't be as many of those projects, but to me that seems like just allocating the true cost to those funding sources. That if, you know, the cost of a project isn't just the asphalt, it's the staff time and engineering time and everything else, and making sure that all those costs are allocated that way. That makes a lot of sense to me, unless there's any big objections. I mean, we're going to be working hard on the health insurance topic, I think, in this committee, so hopefully we find a better path forward on that. I think it makes sense to do any tax rebates out of the fund balance, because if the idea is they should never have been collected in the first place, well, they just went into the fund balance. We had more revenue than we should have, so that's, makes sense to me. I understand when it comes to things like salary adjustments for core general employees, like there are a lot of people who are underpaid, and if we're going to continue to attract and retain folks, I understand why you're putting that $2 million in the budget. I also think that's something that you can look at and say, you know, if revenues aren't coming in where they need to, that's a dial that gets turned, so maybe gets phased in a little bit more slowly. I'm sure you're thinking through that as well.
Yep.
I'm sure you're going to be thinking about, you know, where cuts can be made, because when you talk about rolling back to 2025 budget as a starting place, a lot of departments have had expansions in terms of the number of employees that they have and that kind of thing, that rolling back to that isn't, there's just not a magic wand to wave. Like, it's going to be painful cuts. I hope you think really, really carefully about where those are. When I look at some of those slides in terms of this much reduction from these different departments, I have concerns about things like development and services, that if it's harder to do development in Lee Summit or takes longer, that's tax revenue we may end up losing if we're not able to keep pace with that's, you know, future growth that will impact future budgets. So just things like that in terms of thinking about making sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot to, when we have things like the PRI land coming online that is going to need a lot of staff time, but also is going to increase our revenues greatly as it develops. Just, I know it's a lot to balance, but I want to think about that in terms of those departments and looking at those citizen priorities where public safety is a top priority in the city. It always is. I know it is for every person on this council, and it's important to the future growth of the city, that people don't want to live here and start businesses here and eat here and play here and shop here if they don't feel safe.
Right.
So we have to be really careful at protecting that. Public works as well. Like, people say that, you know, traffic and quality of the streets and things like that is a top priority. So just balancing citizen priorities. But it's like, there's no department that's easy to cut. Like, every person that works for the city is valuable and does important work. And it's like, that's why this conversation is so painful, because I can't point to any thing and say, well, that's not important. It all is, but priority is about trade-offs and looking at what our citizens value and why they, what they sent us here to do. I think those are really important. I have a little bit of concern about the stormwater tax that we talked about that in this council, and we're talking about it to our citizens in terms of increase in services. And if we just turn around and say, well, this is just barely keeping us where we are and we're cutting, like, that's kind of what it sounded like, was that would pay for the continued current level of service. Is that not?
No, and maybe, yeah, if I
Okay,
can have
then
Michael Park
some
kind of walk you
clarification
through
on that
that.
would be
Yep.
great. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't take it that way. It's not purely an offset.
Okay.
Any stormwater utility would definitely be an enhancement, right?
Yeah, Michael Park, Director of Public Works. So I want to be clear on that. We did not, the budget you see, scenario one, did not include any of that shift of core general fund expenses to a future stormwater utility. That's all a contingent. And what we were mindful of is we presented the stormwater utility to the mayor and council in preparation for that ballot measure that's now been extended, was that we would not do a reallocation of resources. It was an expansion to add services. Okay. So when we calculated up how much we're currently investing in stormwater, we had tallied up somewhere about $700,000 to $800,000, right? And that's in the personnel and the equipment. There are also other what we would consider stormwater-related costs that, like, we locate all of our stormwater infrastructure. There's a cost. In fact, that's a significant cost. That's several $100,000 a year to participate in one call with the state of Missouri, and then to actually locate all those facilities. Those were not in that $700,000 to $800,000 that we said we would preserve. So it's some of those other costs that might be able to move between the two different funds so that you truly see an expansion in service, because we talked a lot of what you would get out of $7 to $8 million. And
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but like on one of those slides, it was listed as one of the line items of how we get here potentially.
Right.
So Why is that?
Well, because what you see on that slide of how you get there potentially, those are all, just think of those as little increments, little small slices of the pie. So if you have, say, one service that you're reducing by $200,000, you might be able to replace that $200,000 with a reallocation of other expenses. Not any one of those is a major or silver bullet, if you will, to fix it all.
I guess what I'm saying is, if that money is supposed to be allocated for new staff, new services, expanded services, and those services aren't currently in the budget picture because we haven't passed the tax yet, then I don't see why it's on that slide at all. Because it sounds like you're saying we can basically, like, however you want to put it, like, reallocate those funds, like, it's.
Yeah, it's not simple. It's very
I'm not saying that
complex.
It's not.
So no, I guess it could be an option, and we're hearing clearly the direction is you would not want to move.
You're hearing one person's voice. I just want to be very clear. Like, if I'm telling someone that this tax that you're voting on is for expansion of services.
And I completely agree. Yes, I believe that as we would move forward.
The optics wouldn't look right.
Well, and like, it's just, it wouldn't be the right thing to do to ask. Now, if you want to go out and tell the public that it's either we start making cuts to these services or you pass this, I mean, that's another conversation, but that's not how it was discussed at council.
I just want to be clear that that's not our proposal. It's certainly not my proposal. Ours is to be consistent with what we presented to the mayor and council for the election issue. It would expand. And what we're saying is that there are some other costs that were not presented to the mayor and council when showing that is really the full, they're like affiliated costs to stormwater that are stormwater eligible. Think of like street sweeper, right? We have one of those. Some of that could move back and forth, but we would not want to lose sight of the intent of the tax is to increase services, small projects, public education, hire 2 crews. All of that would happen with the tax, and if you started to move general fund expenses towards that tax that are eligible under stormwater, you would, what you're saying is true, you would eliminate the ability to extend that tax to provide those new services, and that is not what we want to do. That is wrong. I think we have to be very careful in some of the other items that were up there. You know, you look at the transportation tax, you can't just shift that burden because we've made public commitments for what that provides, and we're very careful with that.
And I think that's the kind of policy level guidance we can provide up here is like, if we're telling folks this new tax is for this new service, that's what it needs to be.
Correct.
I guess my overall feeling comes down kind of close to where Mayor Pro Tem Lopez did, but with maybe just a little bit more on be a little bit more understanding there's uncertainty, planning for a little bit better revenues than we're currently planning for, but then be very ready to make adjustments as we start to see actual numbers come in. What I don't want to see is to start making irreversible cuts. Now, things like, you know, not doing as many trainings and travel in a particular year is one thing, but, you know, I don't want to see you cut staff people who it's going to be hard to fill those positions later if and when we need to. That hiring freeze before cuts. I just want to make sure that we're being measured and not pulling every single lever before we know exactly what's going to come down from the county or from sales tax, from everything else. That let's be kind of phased, incremental, ready to make adjustments. That would be my preference as a general direction. But I would, of course.
If I could just add.
Yeah, please.
Your comments are pretty spot on. There's not a whole lot more I could add other than what I said earlier and what you just stated. And Mr. Dunning, I think you and the team are headed in the right direction as far as, you know, what do you use as your guide and your best guide, and how if there's going to be tough decisions and cuts and all that, has got to stick to the plan, the strategic plan. The citizens told us what they wanted as priorities, and we need to honor that, starting with core values, the seven critical success factors. That's what's going to guide us. It's been guiding us. I don't think we should deviate from that. And so I think you're spot on by starting there. But yeah, I mean, I think more than ever, I think, you know, we're going to have to, I know you all are very vigilant month to month. we're going to have to be even more so. And just the whole good old Hawkeyes had just really, but also continue to keep this committee informed along the process, and just avoid any surprises. As we find out the information from the other jurisdictions, whether it's a county, who knows what's going to happen with the state. But yeah, more than ever, we're going to have to be more vigilant, but use these plans that we have as a guide that the citizens have helped us prioritize. And that's what we're up here for, to execute. So, and work with you guys. So anyway, that's all I have.
No, absolutely. One of the things we didn't really dig into it is going back to the public comment that we had tonight. I understand that this is a tough budget time and that there's a lot to figure out, but I have always believed, and I continue to believe, that it's not fair to pay people who are doing very close to the same job at very different rates. And we need to solve that. It's just not right. And I think that the public commenter was spot on, that it's going to just create a lot more issues. And if you lose a lot of folks and have to start paying everybody overtime to keep the department running, that's going to increase costs too. And we need to be thinking about that. So I hope as you work on this, and as we've made very clear, public safety is a top priority, that's part of that. And we need to make sure that we're addressing it. Councilmember Funk, did you have anything to add? Or you were kind of
You just took the thunder there.
Sorry.
I think we need to put an emphasis on that before we start moving into this facility and everybody's working side by side and see where we can land there. But I think going off what Mayor Pro Tem Lopez had mentioned about projections, I feel like when we get these presentations on developments, and I'll use Costco as an example, we're giving up this incentive and we're hearing, a piece of land that was making zero, and now Costco is projected to do this in sales tax revenue, and I think Mr. Bushek could probably share those numbers, and they're going to do this and grow, and we have the things at Discovery Park. I think, I know it's a hard factor, and we're saying, we're only projecting a 3% increase. We could look at that a lot harder of what exactly is this project going to bring online, and what was discussed when we voted on this project was a significant amount of money. Along with Costco, we take Discovery Park. I mean, they're so close to coming online with many of their facilities and getting tenants in there. The other things that are going on in the East Village, I think just those projections to be able to say, hey, we're going to look better in October and November. What are we thinking on those? But that's kind of my 2 cents, Chair. Thank you.
And Councilmember Funk, I think that you've mentioned a few times previously about wanting to have kind of better multi-year projections for budgets. Yep. I think that's not something that you guys need to figure out today, but when you talk about those future revenues and things, future expenses, like we need to start thinking more than 6 months in advance and making kind of bigger strategic vision for our budget over multi-years. I know it's difficult and there's always uncertainty, but the more we can.
That doesn't mean you don't do it.
Doesn't mean you don't do it, and the more you can have these conversations early, it doesn't make the realities easier, but it gives us more time to think things through, and I'm sure for the staff side too. We have yes, Councilmember Lovell.
On the public safety sales tax, so the initial budget revenue is 14.8, initial expenditure is 15. How much of, and I'm trying to think back to when we passed that public safety sales tax. How much of that is for payroll?
There's
compression type items that, like, if we, like, the don't go away, not one-time deals. How do we allocate those dollars?
I would say the majority of that is towards personnel. There are some one-time and some projects layered in there. I'm looking at where's Rick and Eric? Is that accurate? Yeah, majority's
and that was
personnel.
What initially was
enhancing public safety, and a lot of that's personnel.
For personnel. And then how much of our general fund is for personnel?
For public safety?
Yeah.
Are you trying to clarify though how much?
I'm trying to think of, like, you think I'm just looking at what we cut out of the public safety or what the delta is, and just thinking, like, you know, like, I don't know, was it this last year or last 2 years, like when we go by, you know, to water recovery boats or something like that, like, you know, what is, like, just, again, not trying to diminish public safety, but like what items are necessary items, what items are want items, and just trying to understand, like, of that 14.8 million in revenue, how much of that's, you're saying most of that's allocated towards payroll, then what else comes out of the general fund for police and fire?
So that's what we're showing here, these numbers here. Our fiscal year 26 was what, 55 million, almost 56 million.
Okay. And then,
Well, and Councilmember Lovell, if I,
go ahead.
I feel like when we've talked about public safety sales tax before, when it was first implemented, it was a little bit heavier towards things like equipment, like new ambulances and things like that. But then as those purchases were made, it sort of shifted more towards personnel. Do I have that right? That we made some of those physical improvements that we had been promising, but then now that those have already been taken care of and salaries are growing, it's kind of, the allocation of that is maybe changing a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think we did the ambulances through public safety sales tax.
Sorry,
but
there were,
you're spot on.
yeah.
There was some equipment and things, training, because the whole thought behind.
It built up a little bit of fund balance in there too,
Yes.
which is good to have some reserves, but.
I think my general question was just how much of that budget was allocated towards things versus people. And if there was like, hey, maybe we could hold off on a couple of things that were big ticket items that don't diminish the level of service or safety that our citizens get, but might be maybe wants, not necessarily critical needs. So that was really the reason for my questioning, is in that lump, but it sounds like majority of it is personnel.
Your point, Councilmember Lovell, is yes, if there's some things in there that it's like, no, we could, this would truly be an enhancement. Do we absolutely have to have it this fiscal year? No, right? Perhaps that holds until next fiscal year. Doesn't mean we don't keep trying to find ways to make it happen. But what we've put in place, we want to do the best we can to keep it in place, right?
Yeah. So, look, this is my last Finance and Budget Committee, and I'm off council tomorrow. This is a major issue that the new council and mayor, you know, have to take on. I certainly don't think the first answer is tax. I do think you got to look inward, which it sounds like we're doing here. I lean with Councilmember Shields a little bit, like, you know, maybe you don't have to rip the full Band-Aid off and you can take a measured approach. But I'll just get on my soapbox for one last time, because I've been saying it since I got on here, is I think how do we eliminate being in this position in the future? And I will say it, I've said it since I got on here, is that I think there's a better way for us to budget our revenues and expenses. And I look on here and I see a lot of these issues are self-inflicted, and that bears on us, that bears on the city. I see escalating healthcare costs. You know, we approved $2 million, you know, last minute. You know, that should be something internally inside City Hall that's like, you know, that should be resonating. I see loggers' contribution increases. Like, we had that presented to us a couple years ago. I mean, it's like, and we greenlit it. Operational costs for new facilities, Green Street, South PD Substation, Joint Operations Center. When I hear we're kind of learning, I say like, well, and again, listen, I'm just as much at fault. I mean, Green Street, I greenlit a lot of these things. I support a lot of these things. I want all these things to happen. But when you build something, there's obviously an ongoing cost that goes with it. What could we have done better when we're building that thing to understand the operational costs that are coming, right? Like, we know those are coming and we need to account for those. Or how are we going to generate revenue from it? From the private sector, you would never build something and not know those costs and how you're going to account for those revenues and do it. Again, this is not a blame on anyone. Shame on me for not paying more attention to this stuff. I also think the idea that as a public entity, building a budget based on what you think you're going to do in revenue for the upcoming year based on growth and unknowns is a little bit dangerous. And I would just say, again, I'll just go back to the private sector. We base our budget when we go into the year based on our revenue from the previous year. And we build a delta in that. I know that the idea behind tax dollars coming in is that we need to spend them, but I also think it's okay to build a healthy little margin in there and then run your expenses based on previous year and then increase the next year versus we think we're going to do this and now that's coming back, we're going down. So again, it's an unenviable position to be in for the new council and for you guys to go through this. I hate that there's people not, that have been left behind. I'll even say it too with the union negotiations. Like, we know that's coming every 3 years. That we've got to do better to not put ourselves in this position when we renegotiate those. We know those are going to grow. There has to be a way that we're accounting for these things year over year. I know there's a way to do it so that when we get hit with it, it's not just this huge delta that we have to go with. I would also say, and again, shame on me, like in those negotiations, or whenever we're doing that, probably should have been thinking about our budget more. I'm not saying we didn't, but we're making decisions and then I guess we'll kind of go figure out how to do it. And so I just say all that because I think there's a much better way to do this and to relieve some of the stress and pressure on our organization. And I go back to that pie chart, and I think that pie chart's really good, where you break out, you look at the budget allocation, and, you've got a certain percent set for and maybe there was another one too, but let's just say a certain percent set. I think it's okay to just set that percentage. Those pies could be set percentages. And as the revenue grows, those percentages grow and those increases grow for people. Anyway, I'm just kind of thinking theoretically because it's here we're in this situation. It's how do we avoid this situation? I know that the matter at hand now is how do we fix it, but I think there's a lot of things we could do to not put ourselves in this position in the future. And I think part of that is just being a little more conservative with our projections and our numbers. And I would just say this, and it's not just public entities, private companies do this too. You naturally grow to your revenues. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. As a business, I shouldn't necessarily just grow to my revenues. I should grow to the critical needs that I need for my business to do the job that I need to do. And that's a hard thing to figure. I mean, it's subjective in a lot of ways. Right. And so, look, I don't envy them and you guys having to go through this. And I wish I was around for the next 4 years to help. But I trust the group that's here to fix this, get through it. I think you take a measured approach. I don't think you rip the Band-Aid off. I think you take care of your people where you can. I feel for Corps General. I feel for everybody. It's a tough position to be in, but anyway, that's it. I'm off my soapbox. Thanks.
You can always come back to help us.
Public comment is open for you anytime you want to. We could have public comments here at every finance and budget.
Maybe. So I just have
Yeah.
a question,
Yeah,
Chair.
please.
Mr. Dunning, and I don't want to keep laboring. I mean, we're not going to solve this tonight, but how does the fund accounts like VERP and all that come into play?
They do.
In this kind of process?
Yeah, they do come into play, and that's something annually we'll look at. It's vehicles, it's our computer systems and things like that, and we ask ourselves, can we extend the life of these to help navigate through challenging times like this? What we want to be very mindful of, though, is not just, I'll say, stripping those and kicking the can down the road to the extent that we're not set up for success in the future. Because it'll come back to bite you. And so is there some capacity there? Yes, perhaps when we look at, take for instance, right, a laptop or something, right? If it's on a 3-year replacement schedule, well, should it be 5, right? So there's little increments in there, but you don't want to just wipe it away.
Right. It's just maybe something the committee can look at and just turn every stone, every bucket. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that turn over every stone is an important way to put it. Be looking everywhere. a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there will add up. I know you guys are doing that. I did want to say a couple things. One is, I think a lot of the problem this year is Jackson County. And the way that the county has acted over the last several years, hopefully it's going to improve. The voters, in their infinite wisdom, recalled our county executive. We're going to change the assessor's position, I think, to an elected position, where some of this may get better, but I just want to say that I don't think this is all, or even most, like poor planning. Like, you can't predict that the county is going to lose their mind. They did. It was unfortunate, and we're all dealing with the fallout still. But I do agree with when we were going through collective bargaining agreements that the question was asked, can we afford this? How much capacity do we have? And the answer was not very clear. It was a lot of, we can turn the dials and like that. It makes it hard for us to make good decisions when we don't understand the full impact of those or what the thinking is. So I'm not looking for more explanation. I'm just telling you that's kind of the feeling from this side of the dais. And then finally, it's great that we've added to our fund balance a lot of years. I do think of that as kind of a rainy day fund, a safety cushion, however you want to put it. But I do think we don't have to add $1 million or $2 million to that balance every year. And if we budget a little bit more aggressively and we have to dip in a couple $1 million to that balance, like, to me, it's okay to not just always be doing this. We can go up and down just a little bit and then adjust the next year. Like, let's not make too many rash decisions that we can't undo or let facilities fall into disrepair that's going to be more expensive to fix later. Like, let's see what happens this year and then continue to adjust. So that's my philosophy on it. So do we have any other comments, any other discussion?
Well said.
Thank you for this work. I'm glad that we had this work session to discuss all this before you brought forth a budget. I do appreciate having us as part of the process, especially during these really difficult conversations. I know we've had we always have a lot of city staff in here. I think we've had some additional city staff in here that don't always come to these meetings. We do care about you guys. We do want to do right by you. And I hope that message has come through when you're working on these budgets. So, all right. Then, now that we're done with the real fun part, roundtable. Do we have any roundtable from the council?
Chair Shields?
Yes.
Can we talk next steps real quick?
Oh,
This was
yep,
my
see?
last
See, I
slide.
was
I'm
just like,
sorry.
we're done with this now. No, go ahead.
So right now, what's currently scheduled is May 4th for the Finance and Budget Committee to consider general fund and then all the other funds. We will work. We don't have much time before that meeting, given the feedback we've had here, so we'll do our best. I don't want to skip that meeting by any means, so we'll bring back the best that we have for that. And then what I don't know is if we'll have it all packaged up in order to hit, we'll need to advertise for the public hearing for the council meeting 2 weeks in advance. So just thinking
If we, with a public hearing like that, can you open it and continue it without re-advertising? So if we needed to push it back a week, is that a possibility legally?
I think that's the case, yes.
Maybe plan for the best, but if we have to push back, we can?
Yeah, I think that's the case, because, yeah.
I believe we can do that. The real issue is the last meeting we have an opportunity to do second reading on is June 16th, so we just need to make sure we can.
How far apart do first and second readings need to be? Like, can we call a
we
special
could-
session if we needed to?
Yeah.
Okay, we can make it happen. I want you to do a good job, not a fast job. I want you to do a fast job too, but
A fast, good job is better, right?
a fast, good job is great, but
Take all the time you want.
but also I appreciate the level of communication, and like if the May 4th meeting is still more high-level sketching than full details, I'd still rather do that than not have the opportunity for the information to be shared. So we understand that everything's a work in progress, and we'll do our best, yeah.
Safe to say this, plan on the May 4th meeting, we'll bring the best that we have at that point in time. If we need to bump the public hearing. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Because otherwise, we need to get that public hearing out for the May 12th meeting, and not knowing how much we're going to have done on the 4th is concerning, right? So is that what I'm hearing? Plan on the meeting on the 4th.
Yeah, and I'd say notice for the public hearing, and if we have to open the public hearing and continue it for
Okay.
a week, then
Okay.
I assume that the mayor-elect will be happy to do that.
Okay.
He's nodding, so.
So will we add,
Sorry, I won't put words in your mouth, but I figure you're not giving me a glare, so, yeah. Well, I said mayor-elect, yeah.
so will we have enough?
Yeah, I believe Councilmember Carlisle has been or is being appointed as a
Okay.
member of this committee before the new committees are set, so we'll have a quorum.
I'm officially resigned at midnight tonight.
You're just done.
I had to send an email.
Okay.
So you guys could keep coming. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. All right, so, Mr. Dunning, am I not jumping the gun to say that now we can move on to roundtable? Okay. Do we have any roundtable from the committee? Thank you, Councilmember Lovell, for your service. You will be missed. You have made these discussions better. I would have embarrassed you at council last week, but you weren't here, but I will do it tomorrow night also. But I appreciate your service
Plan
on,
on embarrassing all of y'all too.
but I appreciate your service on this committee. You make our discussions better, and thank you.
Thank you, it means a lot. I appreciate that.
Do we have any roundtable from staff?
Yeah, I would just like to make a couple comments around, I felt like we had some really good direction on coming back with like a long-term forecast and some comments on the collective bargaining agreements. As the director of finance, I think you need to put finance in the front and make sure that they are part of the conversations and that you're looking at the budget holistically and the impacts. When you make large changes, you need to come back with a budget amendment and have those discussions. So I just really think that that's important and not something that we're currently doing.
Can you expand on that comment a little bit? I don't know that, I just want to make sure the committee fully understands what you're saying.
Yeah, we were not in the negotiation discussions when you talk about the impacts to the budget. These were well-known and something that we should have had. I believe when you take those contracts forward and you know the budget impacts, you should have a corresponding budget amendment that goes with it. And then the forecast should be part of that decision-making process. We have long-term forecasts. We need to be leveraging them. We know what the impact is going to be on a multi-year basis. Those conversations need to be had, and they need to be done before a decision is made.
Don't disagree. I want to be forward-looking and not backward-looking, but yes, in the future, it's going to be really helpful to have this full discussion. And I know negotiations are never easy, but we need to have a full picture of what the impact of these decisions are. And when we ask for that information, we need to have it. So I don't disagree. Any other roundtable?
No, I don't think so.
All right, then we are adjourning Councilmember Lovell's last Finance and Budget Committee meeting at 5:32 p.m.
My last meeting.